The thing behind the ice wall. Magnus Peterson had been fishing the waters off Greenland's northern coast for 37 years. His father had fished these waters, and his grandfather before him. The Peterson family knew the Arctic seas the way other men knew their own gardens, every current, every seasonal shift, every temperamental mood of the ice. But Magnus had never seen anything like this. It was early September, that brief window when the midnight sun had finally begun to set again, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet that seemed impossible anywhere else on Earth. Magnus stood on the deck of his trawler, the Isbjorn, watching his nets rise from the depths. The winch groaned against an unusual weight. "Heavy catch today," called out his deckhand, a younger man named Peter from Nyuk who'd only been fishing for 3 seasons. The kid still had that enthusiasm, that wonder that the old-timers had long since traded for efficiency and routine. But when the nets broke the surface, there was no catch at all. Instead, the nylon was torn, shredded in a way Magnus had never seen. Not cut cleanly like a propeller strike, not frayed from normal wear. The fibers looked almost melted, fused together in strange patterns that caught the low Arctic light with an oily sheen. "What the hell?" Peter leaned over the rail, reaching for the damaged section. "Don't touch it," Magnus said sharply. Something in his gut twisted. In 3 decades of fishing, you learned to trust those instincts. The sea had ways of telling you when something was wrong. They pulled in the rest of the net, finding more of the same damage at irregular intervals. Whatever had done this had moved through the net multiple times, or there had been multiple somethings. Magnus stood at the rail, staring out at the ice wall that dominated the northern horizon. The locals called it the Arctic Wall, a massive barrier of ancient ice that stretched as far as the eye could see in either direction. It was a relatively recent formation, the result of shifting glacier and unusual ice patterns over the past 15 years. Scientists had come from Denmark and America to study it, excited about ice cores and climate data. But the Greenlandic fishermen had learned to avoid it. There was something about that wall, something that made even the most rational men uneasy. And Magnus had been fishing closer to it than he'd ever dared before. "We should head back," Peter said, echoing Magnus's thoughts. "Those nets are done for anyway." Magnus nodded, but as he turned to the wheelhouse, something caught his eye. A shape in the water, perhaps 200 meters off the starboard side. Large. Moving just beneath the surface. "You see that?" he asked Peter, pointing. The young man shaded his eyes, staring. "Whale, maybe. Wrong time of year, though." It wasn't moving like a whale. Whales had a rhythm to their swimming, a grace. This thing moved in stops and starts, sometimes disappearing entirely before reappearing closer to the ice wall. And there was something about its shape, too angular, too deliberately geometric. Magnus grabbed his binoculars, training them on the disturbance. For just a moment, as whatever it was surfaced slightly, he saw it clearly. A crystalline structure, like ice but not ice, refracting the light in impossible ways. It seemed to pulse with a light from within, a pale green luminescence that made him think of the aurora borealis trapped under the waves. Then it was gone, sliding beneath the surface and disappearing toward the ice wall. "Did you see it?" Magnus asked, his voice rough. Peter shook his head slowly. "I saw something. What was it?" "I don't know. But I think we need to report this." They radioed the Coast Guard station in Quinake, but the response was skeptical at best. Strange ice formations, tricks of the light, maybe a submarine research vessel from one of the universities. Magnus knew what he'd seen, but he also knew how he sounded, an old fisherman claiming to see mysterious lights in the water near the ice wall. That night, anchored in a sheltered bay, Magnus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the thing in the water, about the way his nets had been damaged, about the ice wall itself, looming in the darkness. At 3 a.m, unable to stand it anymore, he went up on deck. The sky was clear, stars scattered across the blackness like ice crystals. The aurora danced green and violet overhead, ribbons of light that the ancient Greenlanders had believed were the spirits of the dead. And there, along the base of the ice wall, he saw lights. Multiple lights, that same pale green luminescence, moving in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Almost intelligent. Magnus stood alone on the deck of the Isbjorn, watching those lights, and felt something he hadn't experienced since he was a boy, afraid of the dark, genuine fear of the unknown. Whatever was behind that ice wall, it was waking up. The next morning, Magnus tried to convince himself it had been a dream, a trick of the tired mind seeing patterns in the aurora's reflection. But when he checked the ship's log, there were the coordinates, the timestamps, the notes he'd made in his own handwriting, lights observed at base of ice wall. Multiple sources. Movement suggests coordination. Peter found him in the wheelhouse, staring at the log. "We going out again today?" Magnus looked at the young man, seeing the mix of fear and excitement in his eyes. The kid had seen it too, at least part of it. And Magnus knew that look, it was the same one he'd had as a young fisherman, when the sea still held mysteries instead of just resources. "Different waters today," Magnus said finally. "South, toward Upernavik. Good fishing there this time of year." The disappointment on Peter's face was obvious, but he nodded. Probably for the best. They spent the day fishing the southern waters, and the catch was good. Normal fish, normal nets, normal everything. But Magnus couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. By evening, he'd made a decision. "I'm going to the research station," he told Peter as they motored back toward Quinake. "The Danish one, up by Syra Palak. I want to talk to the scientists studying the ice wall." "You think they'll believe you?" "I don't care if they believe me. But they've been monitoring that wall for 3 years. If something's changing, they'll have data." The research station was a cluster of prefabricated buildings perched on the rocky coast, looking out over the ice wall. Magnus had delivered supplies there a few times over the years and knew the director, a Danish glaciologist named Dr. Anne Christensen. He found her in the main laboratory, surrounded by monitors displaying ice core data and temperature readings. She looked up when he entered, surprise crossing her face. "Magnus, what brings you up here? Not a supply delivery day." "I need to ask you something. About the wall. Have you noticed anything unusual lately?" Anne's expression shifted from curious to guarded. "Unusual how?" Magnus described what he'd seen, the damaged nets, the thing in the water, the lights at night. As he talked, he watched her face carefully. She wasn't dismissing him, wasn't giving him the skeptical look he'd gotten from the Coast Guard. Instead, she looked worried. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to her computer, pulling up a series of graphs and data plots. "We've been seeing anomalies for the past 6 weeks," she said quietly. "Temperature fluctuations in the water near the base of the wall. Unusual seismic activity, not earthquakes, but vibrations at regular intervals. And 3 weeks ago, our underwater cameras captured something." She pulled up a video file. The timestamp showed it was from late August, nearly 2 weeks before Magnus's encounter. The footage was murky, shot in the low light of the Arctic deep, but clear enough to make Magnus's breath catch. Something massive moved past the camera. It surfaced that same crystalline structure he'd seen. In the video, it was even clearer. This wasn't ice, not natural ice anyway. The geometry was too perfect, too intentional. And as it moved, it left a trail of that pale green bioluminescence. "What the hell is that?" Magnus whispered. "We don't know. We've sent the footage to colleagues in Copenhagen, to specialists in marine biology and geology. No one has an explanation. The leading theory is some kind of massive colonial organism, perhaps related to siphonophores, but the crystalline structure doesn't match any known biological material." "How big is it?" And pulled up another file, this one showing sonar imaging. "The largest one we've tracked is approximately 40 meters long and 15 meters wide. But there are multiple entities. We've identified at least 7 distinct objects. Creatures. We don't have the right terminology." Magnus stared at the sonar image, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the Arctic air. 7 that you've tracked. How many are there really?" "We don't know. The ice wall makes it difficult to get clear readings." "But Magnus." She turned to face him fully. "Something is changing. The wall itself is showing signs of instability. There are fractures forming in the ice, and the seismic activity is intensifying. Whatever these things are, they're becoming more active. What are you going to do? We've requested additional resources from the Danish government and the Arctic Council. But the bureaucracy moves slowly, and honestly, without more data, we sound like we're reporting sea monsters. They think it's just unusual ice formations or unknown currents. Magnus thought about the lights he'd seen, the coordinated movement. What if they're not just active? What if they're trying to get out? Anne's expression went very still. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Magnus knew he should stay away. Every rational part of his brain told him to fish the southern waters, to forget what he'd seen, to let the scientists handle whatever was happening at the ice wall. But rationality had never been his strongest suit when curiosity was involved. 3 days after his conversation with Anne, he found himself steering the Isbjorn north again, this time with additional equipment borrowed from the research station. Peter had volunteered to come along, though Magnus had given him several chances to back out. If we're going to do this, Peter had said, we do it properly. With cameras. With proper documentation. If those things are real, the world needs to know. They reached the wall in the late afternoon, when the sun hung low on the horizon, turning the ice a brilliant orange gold. Magnus cut the engine, letting the Isbjorn drift on the current, staying a safe distance from the wall itself. For an hour, nothing happened. They monitored the sonar, watched the surface, took photographs of the wall's structure. Magnus was beginning to think they'd wasted the trip when Peter shouted from the stern. There! Starboard side! Magnus ran to look. Breaking the surface 50 meters away was one of the crystalline entities. In the direct light of day, it was even more impossible than before. The structure seemed to shift and reconfigure itself, panels of crystal-clear material rearranging like a living puzzle. The pale green luminescence pulsed from deep within, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Peter had the camera up, filming, his hands shaking slightly. Are you seeing this? Recording everything, Magnus confirmed, manning the ship's camera system. Getting multiple angles. The entity moved closer, and for a terrifying moment, Magnus thought it was approaching them deliberately. But it passed beneath the hull, creating a disturbance in the water that rocked the Isbjorn gently. Through the clear Arctic water, they could see it descending, heading toward the base of the wall. Follow it? Peter asked. Magnus nodded, starting the engine and easing the ship forward. They tracked the entity as it moved along the wall's base, and soon they were joined by others. 2, then 3, then 5 of the massive crystalline beings, all converging on a single point where the ice met the sea. Magnus, Peter said, his voice tight. The wall. Look at the wall. Magnus tore his eyes away from the entities below to focus on the ice itself. Where the beings had gathered, the wall was glowing. Not reflecting light, but generating it. That same pale green luminescence spreading through the ice in a network of veins that pulsed in rhythm with the entity's own light. The seismic sensors on the Isbjorn began registering vibrations, a deep bass thrum that Magnus could feel in his bones. The entities were doing something to the wall, something that was making it resonate like a massive tuning fork. We need to call this in, Magnus said, reaching for the radio. But before he could key the MIC, something changed. The vibrations intensified, and a crack appeared in the wall, not a natural fracture, but a perfectly straight line that ran from the waterline upward for at least 50 meters. More cracks appeared, forming a geometric pattern that spread across the ice. They're cutting through, Peter whispered. They're cutting through the wall. Magnus grabbed the radio. Research Station 1. This is the Isbjorn, do you copy? We have a situation at the wall. Anne's voice crackled back, tense. We see it, Magnus. We're seeing it on satellite. The entire northern section of the wall is showing the same pattern. This isn't localized, it's happening along a 20-kilometer stretch. What do we do? Get clear. Now. If that section collapses. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. If 20 kilometers of ice wall collapsed into the sea, the displacement would create waves that would swamp anything nearby. Magnus gunned the engine, turning the Isbjorn south, away from the wall. But Peter remained at the rail, camera still recording, staring at what was unfolding behind them. Magnus, you need to see this. Against his better judgment, Magnus looked back. The cracks in the wall had spread into a massive grid pattern, and the ice was beginning to move. Not collapsing, not falling, opening. The sections of ice were rotating outward, like massive doors, revealing what lay behind. There was something there. Something beyond the wall. A structure that dwarfed even the wall itself, catching the low Arctic sun and refracting it into a spectrum of colors that had no names. It was impossibly huge, impossibly geometric, and impossibly ancient-looking despite being made of materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid crystal. And emerging from that structure, descending into the water with a grace that belied their size, came more of the entities. Not 7. Not dozens. Hundreds of them, each one unique in its crystalline configuration. Each one pulsing with that eerie bioluminescence. "My God," Peter breathed. "What are they?" Magnus had no answer. He could only watch as the entities spread out into the Arctic waters, some heading east, others west, still others diving deep and disappearing into the darkness below. They moved with purpose, with direction, as if they'd been waiting behind that wall for exactly this moment. The Isbjorn's radio exploded with chatter, the Coast Guard, the research stations, other ships in the area all reporting the same phenomenon. The ice wall was opening up and down Greenland's northern coast, and these beings were emerging into the world's oceans. Anne's voice cut through the chaos. "Magnus, are you safe?" "For now. And what the hell are these things?" "I don't know. But I just received data from our long-range sensors. Magnus, that structure behind the wall, it's registering thermal signatures consistent with active technology. Manufactured technology. Whatever those things are, I don't think they're from this planet." Magnus felt his worldview fracturing like the ice wall. In all his years fishing these waters, he'd seen many wonders. The aurora, the midnight sun, the profound beauty of the Arctic. But this was beyond wonder. This was contact. "What do we do?" he asked. "Document everything. Stay safe. And pray that whatever these things are, they're not hostile." The world changed overnight. By morning, satellite imagery of the opened ice wall had been broadcast globally. Scientific vessels, military ships, and curious civilians all converged on Greenland's northern waters. The crystalline entities, now being called the Walkers by the media, had spread throughout the Arctic Ocean, some heading as far south as Iceland and northern Norway. Magnus and Peter found themselves at the center of the story. They had some of the clearest footage of the entities, and Magnus's years of experience in these waters gave him credibility with both scientists and the Greenlandic authorities. 3 days after the wall opened, he was standing in Anne's laboratory again, this time surrounded by researchers from a dozen countries, all arguing about what the walkers were and what they wanted. "They could be automated probes," suggested an American astrobiologist. "Von Neumann machines, designed to explore and replicate." "Then why stay hidden behind the ice?" countered a Norwegian oceanographer. "Why not spread immediately upon arrival?" "Maybe they were waiting," Anne said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Waiting for the right conditions. The ice wall formed 15 years ago, but it's been weakening lately due to climate change. What if that was the trigger? What if they were waiting for the ice to reach the right temperature, the right structural integrity to open safely? "So they're environmentally sensitive terraforming machines?" the American asked skeptically. "Or they're alive," said Magnus. All eyes turned to him. He felt foolish speaking up among all these PhDs and specialists, but he'd spent more time observing the walkers than anyone. When you watch them, really watch them, they don't move like machines. They move like they're curious. They approach ships, but they don't attack. They examine fishing nets, ice formations, even marine life. They're studying us as much as we're studying them. "The fishermen might be right," said a Japanese xenobiologist, pulling up video footage on one of the monitors. "Look at this interaction from yesterday. A walker approached a whale pod. It matched their swimming patterns, adjusted its bioluminescence to pulse in rhythm with their songs. That suggests a sophisticated level of social intelligence, not just programming." The debate continued, but Magnus noticed and stepping away to answer her phone. Her expression shifted from curious to alarmed, and she hurried to her computer terminal. "Everyone, look at this," she called out. The room fell silent. On her screen was a visualization of acoustic data from underwater sensors placed throughout the Arctic. "We've been monitoring the walkers' bioluminescence patterns, treating them as possibly visual signals. But one of our team members had the idea to convert the light patterns to audio frequencies." She played the converted data. At first, it was just noise, pops, clicks, and whale-like warbles. But then applied a series of filters, and suddenly there was structure. Pattern. Almost like language. "Is that communication?" someone asked. "We think so. And here's the interesting part." And pulled up more data. The patterns have been changing over the past 3 days. Evolving. Getting more complex. As if they're learning. Learning what? Magnus asked. How to talk to us. Over the next week, the scientific community worked frantically to decode the walkers' light language. It was a collaboration unlike anything in human history, with researchers from every nation sharing data in real time, all trying to understand these beings that had emerged from the ice. Magnus continued fishing, though his catches were smaller now. The walkers' presence had disrupted the normal patterns of marine life. But he also continued observing, documenting, becoming an unofficial liaison between the fishing community and the researchers. It was Peter who first noticed the change. "Magnus, come look at this." They were anchored near one of the research buoys, and a walker had surfaced nearby. But instead of the random-seeming pulses of bioluminescence, this one was flashing in a deliberate pattern. 3 short pulses. 3 long. 3 short. SOS. Peter said incredulously. "Are they using Morse code?" Magnus grabbed the radio. "Research Station 1. We have a walker here using what looks like Morse code." Anne's excited voice crackled back. "We're seeing it too. Multiple walkers are starting to use recognizable human communication patterns. Not just Morse code, we're getting mathematical sequences, prime numbers, even what looks like attempts at visual language using different colored bioluminescence." "They've been studying us," Magnus said, the realization hitting him. "All this time, they've been learning how we communicate. And now they're ready to talk," Anne confirmed. "We're setting up a communication protocol now. Magnus, can you stay with that walker? See if it responds to our signals." For the next hour, Magnus and Peter participated in humanity's first conversation with alien intelligence. The research team would broadcast light patterns from the buoy, and the walker would respond. Slowly, painstakingly, they established a basic vocabulary. Then the walker did something unexpected. It submerged, and moments later, it resurfaced with something in what Magnus could only think of as its hands, manipulator appendages that emerged from its crystalline body. It was holding a piece of ice, but carved into it was a shape. A spiral. Galaxy. Peter guessed. "Is that supposed to be a galaxy?" The walker flashed an affirmative pattern. They'd established that much of a vocabulary. Then it carved another symbol. A circle with radiating lines. A star. The sun. More shapes followed, and Magnus grabbed paper and pencil, sketching them as fast as he could. By the time the walker finished, he had a sequence of symbols that looked like nothing so much as a star map. Anne's voice over the radio was shaking with excitement. "We're getting similar sequences from walkers across the Arctic. They're showing us where they came from." "But why?" Magnus asked. "Why now? Why contact us at all?" The walker began a new sequence of lights, more complex than anything before. It took Anne and her team another day to fully decode it, but when they did, the message was clear. "The ice is melting. Your world is changing. We waited in the cold places, in the deep frozen places, since your planet was young. We have seen 5 ice ages come and go. We have witnessed the rise and fall of countless species. Now, for the first time, a species has the ability to choose its own future. We wish to help, but the choice must be yours. The ice is melting. Time is short." The walker's message changed everything and nothing. Humanity had proof of alien intelligence, of beings that had been on Earth longer than humans had existed as a species. And they were offering help with the very crisis that had awakened them, climate change. But help from unknown aliens proved to be a deeply divisive concept. The United Nations convened emergency sessions. Every nation had an opinion, and few of them agreed. Some saw opportunity, others saw manipulation or threat. Religious leaders proclaimed everything from the end times to first contact with angels. Conspiracy theorists had a field day. And in Greenland, Magnus Peterson just tried to keep fishing. "You could be famous," Peter said one morning as they prepared the nets. "The man who first contacted the walkers. The interviews alone could make you rich." Magnus snorted. "I'm a fisherman, not a celebrity. Besides, I didn't contact them. I just saw them first." "Still, don't you want to be part of this? They're talking about forming a special task force to communicate with the walkers. They want people who've had direct contact. Let the scientists handle it. I've got fish to catch." But the truth was, Magnus couldn't stop thinking about the walkers' message. The ice is melting. Time is short. He'd seen the changes himself over his decades of fishing, the glacier retreating, the ice forming later each year and melting earlier. His grandfather's fishing grounds were now open water year-round. That evening, anchored in a quiet fjord, Magnus saw a familiar green glow beneath the surface. A walker surfaced nearby, smaller than most he'd seen, perhaps only 10 meters long. It floated there, pulsing gently, and Magnus found himself at the rail, staring at it. "What do you want?" he asked aloud, feeling foolish talking to an alien. "Why us? Why now?" The walker's lights flickered in patterns he couldn't quite decode without the translation equipment. But then it did something surprising. It projected an image using its bioluminescence, creating a three-dimensional hologram of light in the air between them. Magnus saw Earth, blue and green and beautiful, suspended in space. He saw the ice caps, white and vast. And then he saw them shrinking, year by year, the projection showing a time-lapse of climate change. The ice vanished. The seas rose. Coastlines changed. But then the projection shifted, showing a different future. The walkers, hundreds of them, working alongside human vessels. Their crystalline bodies seemed to be doing something to the water itself, and in the projection, Magnus could see the ice beginning to stabilize, even slowly grow. "You can fix it," Magnus whispered. "You can help us fix what we've broken." The walker flashed an affirmative. Then the projection changed again, and Magnus's breath caught. It showed the walkers dormant, frozen in ice, scattered across the poles. And it showed them waking periodically over millions of years, always when the planet's climate was in flux. They weren't invaders or gods, they were custodians, designed or evolved to help maintain Earth's environmental balance. "But you need our permission," Magnus realized. "You won't just fix things for us. We have to choose it." Another affirmative flash. Then the hologram faded, and the walker dove beneath the surface, leaving Magnus alone with his thoughts. And found him the next morning, having driven up from the research station. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were bright with excitement and worry. "The UN is preparing to vote on the walker's offer," she said. "But it's not going well. Too many nations see it as a threat to sovereignty. Others want guarantees, contracts, security measures. They're treating first contact like a trade negotiation." "What do the walkers say?" "That they'll wait. But Magnus, the data we're getting from them about climate change, it's worse than our worst models predicted. If we don't act in the next decade, the changes become irreversible. The walkers could buy us time, decades, or even centuries, but only if we let them help." Magnus thought about the projection he'd seen, about the two futures laid out before him. "What do you think we should do?" And was quiet for a long moment. "I think we should trust them. They've been here longer than we have. They've seen civilizations rise and fall. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done it at any point in human history. Instead, they stayed hidden and only revealed themselves when we developed the capability to destroy our own environment." She paused. "But I'm a scientist. I want to believe that knowledge and cooperation can solve any problem. Maybe I'm naive." "Or maybe you're right," Magnus said. "I've spent my whole life on these waters. I've seen them change, seen the ice retreat, seen fish populations collapse and recover. The ocean is resilient, but it needs help now. Our help, and maybe theirs too. Over the next month, the debate raged globally. But while politicians argued, something interesting happened at the local level. Fishermen in Greenland, Iceland, and northern Norway began working with the walkers. Not officially, not as part of any government program, but just as a practical matter. The walkers would indicate where fish populations were strongest, helping fishermen avoid overfished areas. They would warn of dangerous ice conditions. They would help guide whales away from shipping lanes. And slowly, they began to demonstrate their environmental capabilities, cleaning areas of ocean pollution, helping coral systems recover from acidification, even assisting with the capture of microplastics. Magnus found himself at the center of this grassroots cooperation. His years of experience and his early contact with the walkers made him a natural intermediary. He helped other fishermen understand the walkers' communication patterns, helped the walkers understand human needs and concerns. Peter documented everything, posting videos online that went viral. First contact in the Arctic, the media called it. Footage of Greenlandic fishermen working alongside crystalline aliens, cooperating to protect the marine environment. It wasn't the UN that finally made the decision. It was the people. Millions of them, watching these videos, seeing the positive changes in the Arctic waters, seeing a model for how human-walker cooperation could work. The grassroots support became impossible for governments to ignore. 6 months after the ice wall opened, the UN voted to accept the walkers' help, with conditions: transparency in their methods, respect for national sovereignty, and ongoing monitoring by an international scientific coalition. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Magnus was there when the first official cooperative project began, a large-scale effort to stabilize the Greenland ice sheet. He watched from the deck of the Isbjorn as hundreds of walkers worked in concert, their bioluminescence creating patterns across the ice that looked like the aurora made solid. Whatever they were doing, the early results were promising. The ice was stabilizing, even beginning to recover, and stood beside him, tablet in hand, monitoring the data. "It's working," she said, wonder in her voice. "It's actually working. Did you ever doubt?" "Every single day." She smiled. "But Magnus, this is just the beginning. The walkers have so much knowledge to share, about climate science, about maintaining planetary ecosystems, about surviving long-term environmental changes. We could learn how to be better stewards of our own planet." Magnus watched the lights playing across the ice, thinking about his grandfather, his father, all the generations of Petersons who had fished these waters. "They would have liked this," he said quietly. "My family. They always respected the sea, understood that you can't just take from it forever. You have to give back. That's what the walkers are teaching us," and agreed. That everything is balance. They've been maintaining that balance on Earth for millions of years, and now they're inviting us to help. To be partners instead of just inhabitants. A walker surfaced nearby. Magnus recognized it as the same one that had shown him the projection weeks ago. It flashed a greeting pattern, and Magnus raised his hand in response, feeling slightly foolish but also moved by the gesture. "You know what I think?" Peter said, joining them at the rail with his ever-present camera. "I think we're going to look back on this moment as the real beginning of human history. Everything before was just preparation. Now we're part of something bigger." "Or," Magnus said dryly, "maybe we're just fishermen who got lucky enough to see something amazing." But he was smiling as he said it. As the sun set over the Arctic, turning the ice and water gold, Magnus Peterson looked out at his ocean and saw it with new eyes. The same waters his family had fished for generations, but now shared with beings from beyond Earth, all working together toward a common goal: survival, cooperation, and the slow, patient work of healing a wounded planet. It wasn't the end of the world after all. It was just the beginning. Magnus was 70 now, officially retired, though he still went out on the Isbjorn whenever the mood struck him. Peter ran the fishing operation now, employing a crew of young people who had grown up in a world where working alongside the walkers was simply normal. The Arctic had changed, but not in the way Magnus had feared as a younger man. The ice was stable, even growing in some areas. The fishing was better than it had been in decades. And throughout the polar regions, humans and walkers cooperated on environmental projects that were slowly, steadily reversing centuries of damage. And had won a Nobel Prize for her work decoding walker communication. She'd turned down job offers from a dozen prestigious universities to stay in Greenland, leading the International Walker Studies Institute from the same cluster of buildings where she'd first tracked mysterious lights in the deep. But the biggest change, Magnus thought, was in the way people saw the world. The walkers had taught humanity that Earth was a garden that needed tending, not a resource to be exploited. That the long view, thinking in centuries instead of quarterly profits, was the only view that mattered when it came to survival. Magnus stood on the deck of the Isbjorn, watching familiar green lights beneath the surface. One of the walkers surfaced nearby, and he recognized the pattern of its crystalline structure. His old friend, the one who had shown him the future all those years ago. "Thank you," he said quietly, as he had said so many times before. The walker's lights pulsed in a pattern he'd learned to read. "Thank you for letting us help. Thank you for choosing cooperation. Thank you for having the courage to trust." Magnus smiled, feeling the Arctic wind on his face, and thought about all the strange paths that had led him here. A simple fisherman who had happened to be in the right place at the right time to see something impossible. To be part of something that changed the world. The ice wasn't just melting anymore. It was healing. And so, perhaps, was humanity. If you liked the story, hit the like button, subscribe for more, and share this story with your friends. The end.